I have said a lot of negative things about Halo Infinite, and I do believe the things I've said are true and currently remain true. But when you sit down to play the Halo Infinite campaign, all of that melts away. Discussing it as a product, it doesn't bode well for the developers or the publisher. Discussing it as a game, however, is a whole different experience. This video is going to be concise, spoiler-free, and I'm not going to cut it up with a bunch of little IRL segments and jokes because I don't want to distract from the topic with my really cute face. So let's buckle down and talk about Halo Infinite's combat and exploration from the perspective of yours truly. Halo Infinite's campaign makes me feel like a child again. It captures my imagination, it encourages exploration, and on top of that, the combat is diverse and exciting and nails something that was first nailed in Halo Combat Evolved. With Combat Evolved's interesting sort of dance-like combat style that Bungie mastered, 343 is now copying the homework of that and somehow succeeding dramatically. Now, I have some negative criticisms about Halo Infinite, and we'll get to those in a second, but first we have to discuss the importance of putting a player in an environment where they're forced to pay attention, because anything can happen, and if they let their guard down, anything will. Halo Infinite's combat and gameplay feel dynamic and fluid. It really masters that dance-like feel that previous Halo games had from the Bungie era. I never feel bored. I never feel like I can really let my guard down and just be a badass for free, even on normal difficulty. I feel like something is going to screw me over if I don't start checking my corners, listening for sound cues. And to be fair, this mostly stems from not having a minimap. Instead, of course, you have the traditional Halo tracker, motion tracker, radar, whatever you want to call it. The radar, of course, gives you very little specific information and instead tells you generally where an enemy is, but it doesn't tell you what kind it is. You have to go look and see what they're doing and who's doing it. When you see a little red dot approaching you from behind and you don't know if it has an energy sword or 2 plasma grenades, a hammer, or a completely non-threatening grunt that's just running around in terror because you killed his commanding officer. How mean of you. A lot of other shooters have focused on that sort of shooting gallery-like experience, whereas the Halo games always had that very unique back and forth dance where the enemies are rotating around you, you're rotating around them, they're jumping, they're throwing stuff at you, they're controlling vehicles, they're playing with the sandbox, and you are playing with them. It feels way more like an art form than a science. Not everything has a direct hard counter. There isn't a single weapon that you would use on a single type of enemy all the time. You don't have to switch to the exact right tool at the exact right moment. Of course, there are things you can use to give yourself an advantage, but for the most part, it's about how you want to be creative in the sandbox. That's always what made Halo, Halo. In Halo Infinite, you feel less like a Swiss Army knife and more like the hand that wields one elegantly. And that is a really powerful feeling to give the player. So back to paying attention. Audio is even important because if you're not paying attention to the sounds, you don't really know what's coming until you look at it, and you don't always have time. Now, for an open world shooter to make me pay attention this much in almost every engagement, it's just so interesting. You know, in contrast to other open world shooters, the only time I ever felt something like this is, well, Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, elements of Rage 2. But compared to those games, this game has a much more systemic sandbox system. All of the interactable environments and vehicles and weapons and throwable things that you can use, so can the enemy. Meaning you don't know what's about to happen. How could you know what's about to happen? Like I said, it's more of an art form than a science. You're not just looking at an enemy and immediately realizing after time played that, oh, this counters this. X weapon for Y enemy, Y weapon for X enemy. The enemies are engaging with the sandbox. They have access to the same things in the field that you do. So you add that Halo-y element to an open world environment, and it works so well. Because open world games, in my opinion, are at their best when they are dynamic and unpredictable. So this style of dance-like combat, this art form-like combat that Bungie once perfected and that 343 is somehow nailing, it just feels right at home in an open world. It's one of the best open world combat systems I've ever seen, and I didn't think I would ever say that about a Halo game. The combat works well in the open world because it keeps you on your toes, and every time you see a large group of banished, your toes are exactly where you should be. Minding your environment, paying attention to sounds, making sure you're not standing near hazardous materials, it just all encourages you to be paying attention constantly, utilizing the tools in your toolbox, but almost more importantly, utilizing the environment. And nothing in a video game allows you to use your environment like a grappling hook. And Halo Infinite's grappling hook is one of the best I've ever played with. It's so simple, it's so easy to use, and it has opened up so many fun gameplay moments that would not have ever happened otherwise. Whether you use it to grab a fusion cell, a weapon, an enemy, or part of the terrain or a building, this piece of equipment exists to interact with the space, not fly you over it, not fly you around it, not to make it irrelevant, but instead for you to utilize it and pay attention to it. Every little height advantage, every little low-hanging bridge, every single weapon and explosive on the ground is suddenly a target for your grappling hook and the potential for a really fun bit of gameplay. So talking more about the open world elements, how does that engage with the Halo formula? Well, to be honest, it's a good amount of waypoint chasing, just like any open world game. You open up your map, you ping an area you want to go to, and you run, fly, drive towards it. Now, of course, you do have that oh-so-fun grappling hook to get you there, and that can be a lot of fun once it's mastered. I'm still working on it, but hopefully by the time co-op comes out, I won't make a fool out of myself in front of my friends with it. But a good game does not a grappling hook make. A game has to have elements that engage your mind, and the best thing that 343 did is, like I said, not give you a traditional minimap. By not having a traditional minimap, you're forced to take in your immediate surroundings at all times. You're not gonna see if there's a building around the corner by walking up to the corner and checking your map. You have to round the corner. You have to check it out yourself. If you hear noises and sounds, try to see where they're coming from. It's probably going to be something. Now, the TAC map is detailed, but it's not all-encompassing. You need to check and pay attention to your surroundings because the map isn't going to tell you every single piece of information. There are things that aren't marked on the map, and you're not gonna find them staring at it all day. So get out there and explore. Explore on foot, explore in a vehicle, flying or ground, explore with your grappling hook, explore by fast traveling from point to point and just walking around the surrounding areas. I guarantee you, you will find something. This encourages exploration. Exploration encourages adventure. Combine that with a combat system where anything can happen, it's engaging to a degree that most games never get to. Think of games like Breath of the Wild and Dark Souls. No, I'm not a game journalist. I'm not saying it's like Breath of the Wild because there's trees and mountains, or like it's Dark Souls because it's hard. I'm saying those games have a level of adventure to them, a level of vagueness to them. And because of their systemic systems and dynamicness and sandboxes, they feel like real adventures. So if you had that dynamic adventure feeling combined with frantic engaging combat, and when I say engaging, I don't mean it's kind of fun, I'm not using it as a buzzword, I'm saying engaging as in it engages you, it kicks your ass for not paying attention. You have to clue in order to succeed and enjoy the adventure. It demands something of you, and a lot of games don't have the confidence to demand anything from their players. Now let's get to some bad things. The Valor system is completely underdeveloped. I wish it was more like Shadow of War, Dark Souls, or Jedi Fallen Order. The Valor system is how you unlock different weapons and vehicles to call in at FOBs, but I think this is dumb. When you die, you should drop your Valor. It could be a big green glowing orb, it could be a chunk of data, I don't care, but whoever killed you takes it and is imbued with its power. And when they have the valor of being the ones who killed Master Chief, they're a little bit more powerful. They get a more powerful shield, they get a power weapon. So if a grunt kills you, no big deal. Go back, kill the grunt, get your valor back. No lore explanation required, just like in Jedi Fallen Order, and I think that would be great. And the enemy being imbued with strength and power from your valor is similar to when an enemy gets promoted for killing you in Middle-earth Shadow of War. And of course, if you die before you get back to your valor, whether because something randomly falls on your head, or you get stabbed by an elite, or whatever, that valor is gone and you can't get it back, and you get a sort of soft game over. You respawn like normal, but now you've fallen in Valor. When you fall in Valor, you, let's say, start off not being able to call in power weapons. Then you can't call in vehicles with weapons. Then you can't call in weapons at all. Then you can't call in vehicles at all until you get more Valor. And I think Valor should be gained by killing enemies, taking FOBs, saving Marines, and just doing generally heroic stuff. Maybe even some fun things like getting some sick air with a Warthog could get you a little bit of Valor. The open world of Zeta Halo is covered in weapons and vehicles, so it's not like you'll be without, you'll just be without the convenience of calling them in whenever you want until you get enough Valor. Essentially, Brohammer can just say, "You're not doing too hot, I don't feel confident giving you a Scorpion tank." Kill some brute chieftains, punch some grunts in the face, save some Marines, come back, and he's like, "Hey, things are going well, I feel confident dropping some expensive hardware your way." And while Halo Infinite is pure combat fun, my last big complaint is that the power weapons don't feel good. I miss Covenant carbines, I miss Maulers, I miss fuel rod cannons, I miss brute shots, I miss Spartan lasers, I miss saws and railguns, I miss incineration cannons. I'm sorry. I don't find Halo Infinite's weapon sandbox, especially when in the campaign. In the multiplayer, talking about their utility and combo potential is fine, but when I'm in the campaign, I don't care about the utility of the pulse carbine. I don't want to touch it. I would rather dual wield plasma rifles, and in fact, I am really missing dual wield in this game. It would have been really nice to dual wield sidekicks and manglers, but instead, we're stuck with one gun at a time, which just fucking feels like a wasted opportunity. But I would much rather have a beam rifle than a shock rifle. I would much rather have a carbine than a stalker rifle. I would much rather have a brute shot than a Ravager. I'm sorry. These new weapons, while some of them are fun, they ain't it. Like, yeah, the Mangler and Skewer are fun, but I think the Maulers and Spartan Laser are just more mechanically fun. I know it sounds like I'm talking from nostalgia, but I genuinely think those weapons are more satisfying and fun to use. I would much rather use a rocket launcher, sniper rifle, AR, BR, gravity hammer, energy sword than really any of the new weapons on offer. Even the upgraded Bulldog variant in the campaign has nothing on the Halo 3 pump action shotty in my opinion, both in terms of stature and gameplay. And that's it. I wanted this video to be a little bit more concise than this, but I read my entire script through with only adding very little. And now I want to hear from you. What do you think about Halo Infinite's campaign? Let's not talk about it as a product. There'll be tons of time for that over the next year. Let's just enjoy the fact that 343 kinda nailed it. I'll see you when I see you guys. Goodbye.